and Gary Breen from Vicarage Road. That is on the way at 2 o'clock. In the meantime, we will review the Sunday papers. We have Timmy McCarthy and Sarah O'Connor here in the studio. The text number, as ever, is 53106. We are at Off the Ball on Twitter, and we're getting straight into the papers. So as mentioned, Timmy McCarthy, who captained and managed the Irish basketball team and commentator extraordinaire, is here in the studio. And we have Sarah O'Connor, Head of Sport at Wilson Hartnell, formerly Chief Executive at the Federation of Irish Sports. You're both very welcome, guys. Thanks for coming in. We have lots to get through, so I'll start with the back pages first to get us moving. And Liverpool's win last night is on a lot of the back pages. Sun Sport here, FIFA Club World Cup, chest of season. Bobby Firmino with the chest out, top off. Bobby dazzles in Qatar triumph, and a picture of Liverpool there with the Club World Cup. Back page of the Sunday World. The boys are just amazing, really brilliant. That's Jurgen Klopp. Klopp of the world. Again, a picture of the Liverpool team lifting the trophy. Jordan Henderson here. Jurgen hails his amazing stars as Pool crowned club champions. Similar back page in the Sunday People Sport. King of clubs, Liverpool 1, Flamengo 0. Chris McKenna there, a picture of Jordan Henderson and the team lifting the trophy. And then taking the mick, Arteta was never going to be City boss. So it seems that one of the main reasons Mikel Arteta has made the move to Arsenal is that he was failing to get any assurances from Manchester City that he would succeed Pep Guardiola, which is what he wanted. Back page of the Sunday Mirror, exact same headline, taking the mick. Again, no promises from City on replacing Pep, tipped Arteta the way of Arsenal. And you have Liverpool here as well. World Cup. Firmino wins it for the Reds in extra time. Sunday Times sports section. Reds rule the world. Liverpool claim Club World Cup for first time after Firmino's late strike. Picture of Firmino celebrating. And then a story we'll come to in a moment. Leinster FA helped Delaney on bailout. That's Paul Rowan and Mark Tighe. The Sunday Times main section, as it so often tends to do for much of, well, 2019, really has an FAI-related story. FAI had us all fooled, says Michael Healy-Rae. We'll come back to that in just 1 second. Sunday Sport, they go with Liverpool as well, and Firmino celebrating his goal. Liverpool go the extra mile to claim place at the top of the world. And then beneath that, Munster takes spoils from Christmas cracker, Munster 19, Connacht 14 yesterday. And then finally, Mail on Sunday, world beaters, Liverpool and first global title to their European crown, and now set sights on elusive Premier League. So they are your back pages. I must say the Michael Healy-Rae front page in the Sunday Times news section will have caught a lot of people's eyes. So Michael Healy-Rae, obviously independent Kerry TD, has said he's very disappointed at being taken in by very incorrect statements from the Football Association of Ireland. They had claimed the association was in rude financial health. Healy-Rae was at the Oireachtas Sport Committee hearing in April, and he made a long speech summing up what a warm welcome John Delaney would receive in Kerry in due course. He didn't actually ask John Delaney or anybody at the FAI any questions at the hearing, it should be said. So this week Healy-Rae said everyone had accepted the FAI finances were in good order. He says, every one of us, yourself included, and every journalist in the country, we were all told in 2018 by the FAI and by the accountants, I believe, that the FAI were going to be financially debt-free by 2020. Sure, we're all geniuses now. All I can say is I'm very disappointed for what's happened. Here, by the way, is Michael Healy-Rae in April. This was his contribution at the Oireachtas Sport Committee.
I'd like to remind them of what you have done in your job over many years. Whether it's with regard to the District League, the Mount Hawk Park in County Kerry, the Victory Shield Tournament, Killarney Athletic, Castle Island Soccer Club, SD Rovers, and I'm going to finish with one quote. At the end of this month, Mr. Delaney is to come to Castle Island AFC to open the new George O'Callaghan Park. 45 years they wanted for this park to be there. And what I'm reliably told, that if it wasn't for John Delaney and the FAI, that park wouldn't be being opened at the end of this month. You will be most welcome to Kerry. You will get what I would call the mother of all welcomes when you come to Kerry, because your reputation and your respectability will precede you down the road before you land. And we will be there to welcome you. Okay. And all I can say is that, okay, when it comes to the accountancy practices, Chairman, and I'm sure you appreciate this, many of us in business who have to do certain things at certain times. During the recession, people bailed out their own small businesses. They did different things that they had to do to try and give help and assistance. And if you're guilty of anything, you're guilty of trying to help an association in the best way you saw fit at that time. That's all you stand in my book.
So that was him in April. This is him in December. It's not a statement that was great on the day. It certainly hasn't aged well, Sarah.
No, it certainly hasn't. It hasn't aged well at all. I think, there's, I think, very little joy to be found in the situation that the kind of FAI finds itself in, and it's, ironic in the way, just out of the newspapers, when you look at the back pages, kind of just, how much football there is and how many Irish people. I think it's something like 78% of Irish people call themselves football fans. So, I think the situation is what it is now, and I really begin to think we need to kind of start looking at what is the solutions, because it's not going to do anybody any good. I think football is a really important sport in this country, has been for many years. I think the association's due to celebrate its 100th anniversary, is it next year? 2021, almost next year at this stage. And participation numbers are huge. It's a sport that just needs, you need a ball, or not even a ball, pair of boots. We are where we are, and I think we need to go back and find out why that happened and learn the lessons, absolutely. But I also think, we really need to kind of start trying to find a solution, because I think it's a pity, and we were just talking about it before we came on air, that for a situation that kind of became into the public domain in kind of March and April, we don't really seem to have moved on any.
No, we don't. I suppose one of the learnings we could take, Timmy, is that paid representatives who aren't even on the Oireachtas Committee for Sport maybe shouldn't turn up and just make statements in support of the person there to ask questions or answer questions who isn't even answering them. That could be, that'll be a small win for us, but we could chalk that up as a quick lesson.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a hard one to win, though, because, Michael Healy-Rae spoke about Kerry. I mean, if you actually listen to what the tape, it's all about Kerry. I mean, Asti and Mount Hawk and Tralee and Killarney and this 45-year wait for a park and Kerry. It was all about Kerry. I thought the most damning thing he said, though, was the last line, which really what troubled me an awful lot, in that we have public officials saying that in the recession, people and businesses did whatever had to be done to keep businesses going. That's not a good line out. That really, I run my own business, and I've led businesses for many years. That's not true. You just don't do whatever you need to do. You do what's the proper thing to do in tough situations. And I didn't like that line, because that was making an excuse for what John Delaney had done at that point, which had become public in that sense. And obviously we've learned a bit more since then. But, it's not a good situation where we have people, legislating for the country, making points that it's okay to do things just to get through it. It's not.
Page 21 of the Sunday Times main section has a pretty good summary of where we are as the year comes to a close. Doomsday scenario for the FAI. So, for instance, this is Mark Tighe and Paul Rowan. They say it was only last March Donald Conway told Sport Ireland that the association was in a strong financial position. As revealed in the 2018 accounts, the FAI has current debts of more than 55 million, of which 30 million relates to the mortgage on the Aviva Stadium. And then other creditors, because I think people are wondering who all the creditors are. So there's a bit of information here. Other creditors range from office suppliers to the Aviva Stadium company, of which the FAI owns 42%, with the rest held by the RFU. The stadium requires monthly payments of €200,000 from each of its shareholders to cover running costs. The FAI now owes 1.2 million. So they are some of the creditors and some of the obligations the FAI face at the moment. The piece talks as well about how the FAI, you suspect here the source might be the FAI, but the FAI are not happy with Shane Ross because they turned up on Monday with the Grant Thornton report. The document was stamped confidential. The FAI believed it was a solid piece of work, warned of dire consequences if the government didn't offer assistance. And they said under the FAI projections, it hoped to be in a cash neutral trading position by 2023. To get there, it wanted €18 million in refinancing. Ross asked a number of other questions about how the FAI could factor in income from whoever replaces Three. The FAI insisted it would be able to secure a sponsor and so on. The nub of this at the moment seems to be, Sarah, that Shane Ross and the government, based on something the Cozy report said, which is that they don't recommend public money goes to the FAI in its current state. Shane Ross and the government don't want to give the FAI money, which it desperately needs. However, the FAI say that obviously it's urgent. Shane Ross wants 4 prospective directors in place. So the new directors need to be put in place for the government to feel comfortable handing over all the money, whereas any director fears becoming personally liable for reckless trading by an insolvent company. So anybody worth their salt, and the FAI say they've identified people, They don't want to go near the FAI right now because they don't know what's going on. The COSI report is still with Gardaí, and the government are saying, well, hang on, we need those directors in before we can hand over money. Sarah Keane had an interesting suggestion during the week on Radio 1. She has emerged as a real character of substance, it seems, over the last couple of years, given the work with the Olympic Council. She was talking about an emergency committee, as was used with the Olympic Council. I'm sure you know all about that. Which could almost be a sort of a go-between between the FAI and government. But it means that that committee wouldn't be personally liable, so you could attract good candidates.
Yeah, look, I think one of the problems here is, we often, when we speak about sport, we do speak about a sports industry and sport as a business, and sometimes we don't like that as much because, for all of us, I think, of a passion for sport, it's about what happens on the field of play. But I think what's emerged here is a situation like the FAI is a limited company, albeit, one that's without a share capital, so the type of vehicle that's used for not-for-profit companies. And so therefore people who come aboard on directors are actually just the same in the eyes of the law as directors who become directors of any company. And therefore now I think for people to come on board and sign up as directors without kind of having a full insight as to what has gone on is virtually impossible, because literally if those guys go on, they could be running businesses themselves, and they could be putting their whole other livelihood at risk if they were to sign up in those circumstances. So look, it seems absolutely necessary that some form of refinancing is going to come from somewhere. I think when Paul Cook went through the numbers, was it 10 days ago, they seemed to feel that they were close enough to having the bank lined up to refinance them. Reading between the lines, it looks like what the bank may be looking for is some type of guarantee, be that from the state, be it from UEFA, be it from FIFA, be it by creating some type of secondary security on some of the FAI assets. And it does seem that, like, if there is to be a way forward, there's a commercial deal that involves some or all of those parties. And at this stage, I think it probably does look like the best way forward is for some of the people that are already the newer board members who are already directors of the company, coupled with hopefully a couple of really solid experts who have expertise in refinancing or dealing, could come together. And I can understand why they didn't want to sign up as fully fledged directors.
They could be held personally liable. Exactly,
like they're putting the whole rest of their livelihood at risk potentially. Do you know, I mean, if you end up being a director and you're found to have, traded recklessly or allowed a company to trade while insolvent, I mean, there's first of all, it can be a criminal offence with jail time. You can also be disqualified from being a company director for a certain period of time. So, like, I think where we've got to, I think it seems that and this is why in some senses it's probably frustrating that we are here in December, because every month we're running out, looking from the outside in, it would appear that the FAI is running out of road. Yeah. But at this stage, given where we are, I think we are going to need to form some type of committee that government can make itself happy with. They may not yet be fully signed up directors of the company for the reasons we've just discussed, and then hopefully people can get round a table and try to negotiate a solution. And I think at that stage, that solution, government are probably going to be one party, but it's also kind of UEFA and FIFA you want to be talking to, and clearly the bank who's going to do some of the refinancing is also a key party at that table.
Well, UEFA have told the Sunday Times, UEFA is not a financial institution and therefore cannot take on the role as guarantor for the FAI's debts. So that is their stance. They're going to meet with the Oireachtas on January 14th, meet with the Minister for Sport on January 14th. I suspect somehow their position won't have changed dramatically from that. The FAI did explain that the recruiter AMROP has identified 4 people, but they don't want to come on board until the COSI audit is published. The COSI report is with the Gardaí, therefore that's an impasse. And as I said, Sarah Keane with Sean O'Rourke during the week mentioned that a crisis management committee had worked very well. The FAI delegated powers, they can work, they're not personally liable. That seems like an obvious solution, but I think, Timmy, we are heading for the state going in as guarantor for the FAI. That feels inevitable increasingly.
I think it's inevitable. I think the big issue here is credibility has been lost, and it's irrespective of the people involved who damaged the credibility and lost the credibility. For new directors to take on a role, they have to be very clear what they're getting involved in any organisation, whether it's not-for-profit or whether it's a private organisation. That's where the four people, from my opinion, seems to have decided we need to know what's going on here before we're going to sign up to this in that sense. To come out in March with a statement that the FAI is financially solid and will be debt-free in 2020, and then come out a number of months later with massive debts, it just really damages credibility. And what you have now is, so you have no credibility within the FAI from an external point of view. You have new directors, potential directors, who want to understand what their liabilities are before they get involved. You now have a political minefield where we talked with Michael Healy-Rae and his opinion early on. Shane Ross seems to be, there's no photographs now to be taken, so obviously, he's now in a situation where, he's not prepared to put up the money that Paul Cook, who's a good guy. Paul Cook, is a good guy. I knew Paul in a different world a number of years ago. Very good pro and a good guy. So I would give him a lot of credibility in what he's saying. The state have to back them. Like football's the biggest sport in the world. I mean, Sarah made a point a while ago, look at the number of people who play football. 7-8 pages of every sports page every day and every weekend is all about football, whether it is British football, international football, or League of Ireland football, or local football. We've got to fix this. We've got to save the FAI. There's no ifs or buts here. We can mess about with this for the next 6 months, but we've got to save it. And the only way to save it is get them cash. I mean, it's a very simple equation. They need cash, they need debt. The banks appear to be in a position that they're going to give them debt. They just need a guarantor. So, my view is the state has to become the guarantor and let the FAI get them the cash injection they need, get the new directors on board and let them run the association, more tightly governed over the next period of time, because it really came down to lack of real governance. I talked to you earlier on, Joe, offline about another organisation I was involved with where the chief executive had so much power that the board were hostage to him in that situation. If the chief executive said today was Monday, the board said today is Monday, even though it was Sunday.
That was a phrase Niamh Brennan used in her Irish Times piece, actually.
Yeah, and in my experience being involved in a number of large institutions, a very dominant chief executive, can really dominate a board if the board doesn't have courage. And my external view of this organisation over the last number of years is there was little courage in the board to stand up and say, hold on a second, let's check this out. What we need now is the government to be the guarantor, the banks to put the finance in, and a board with new directors that has the courage to bring the FAI to the next level of sport and let the kids and let the players enjoy it,
Sir, just a final one. In your role as Chief Executive of the Irish Federation of Sports, you must have seen lots of national governing bodies, some working very well and others not working so well. So in terms of a chief executive, someone who might step into that role now in John Delaney's departure, and a board, the makeup of a board, what tended to work well? I understand if you're conflicted slightly and can't point to specific examples, but in terms of establishing a board with courage, it would strike me the most important thing is actually the CEO who doesn't try and domineer them, because people who did stand up in the FAI didn't find their progression continue too far.
Yeah, well, I think Timmy just tipped on it there. It's all about the balance between the board and the CEO and the staff, and trying to kind of what they say is that the board are meant to be kind of the brains of the organisation and the staff are meant to be the hands. So the board are meant to have that long-term vision for an organisation and also serve as a check and a balance on the administrative staff, obviously held up by the CEO. And I think the best organisations is where that kind of works well. So traditionally as well, which has been a challenge for sport, the board has been comprised traditionally entirely from people within its membership, be it they were representatives of Leinster, Munster, Connacht, Ulster, and people then have gone on to sports boards and feel that they're there to kind of represent Leinster on the national board, but that's not the case. If you're sitting on the board of an organisation, you're actually mandated to kind of look after the best interests of the organisation as a whole. And I think where we've seen some transitions in sport is where they've kind of maintained an element of that representative formation, but they've also then allied that by freeing up some board spots to come in for independents that maybe have particular expertise, because you may not always have the full range of expertise that you need around a board table from your membership, or you may not be able to get all of that at any one time if your board selection is just through kind of elections that come from representation. And we saw this, the US Olympic Committee internationally had a huge scandal after the 2002 Salt Lake City, when it emerged that they'd kind of engaged in corrupt practices to bring those winter games to Salt Lake, and they were one of the first organisations to do it. So they are mandated to have kind of 4 independents who have never had anything to do with the Olympic movement in the States before, or any of its constituent members. And we're seeing that in Ireland. Cricket Ireland, I think, were the first to do it in the aftermath of that World Cup in the Caribbean. I think was it 07. Swim Ireland have it now. Gymnastics Ireland have it. And look, it has. You know, that, governance too, just because you have that doesn't necessarily mean it will be perfect as well. But I suppose you're trying to kind of, minimise kind of the risks of it kind of becoming an insider's club.
We're always guarding against human nature. In effect, that's what we're trying to do.
But I think, one thing I do in my professional role, I work with chief executives and boards. The chief executive reports to the board. Once you lose sight of that, you've lost control.
Never felt like that in the FAI.
But that's the reality, Joe. The reality is, I work with chief executives and make them aware. You report to the board. The board set the strategy. Your job is to implement it with your team. And once you lose that clarity, you then end up with situations like the FAI. And what it means is that, Sarah made a great point, when you have, particularly in sports organisations, you have people who are well-intentioned, who are well-meaning, they get selected by Munster or Connacht or Leinster or Ulster, and they're part of something, so they feel great, they feel proud, but they may not have the expertise to do what they're supposed to do as board members, because their job is not it's not politics, it's not representing Kerry in politics, this is representing the national board of a situation, and I think that's where it gets caught. But I think, to me, the fundamental point in any board is, once the board lose sight of the fact they're responsible, they are in charge of the chief executive, you're always prone to danger.
And Sarah, just one last question on this. So with regard to the tenure of a chief executive, John Delaney was there a long time. Is it now seen as best practice to not have that as the case?
Well, again, to that point that the CEO reports to the board, I think that's one of the reasons why, it's become, and a lot of sports bodies have done this, you put a tenure on your board of directors, because certainly the whole group should not be the same.
And what about the chief executive?
Well, if the board was doing its job, you're probably not so worried about the tenure of the chief executive, but...
Fair point.
So
generally it's not a done thing, a limit on the tenure of a chief executive. It's more so the board you focus on. Yeah, well, I think, normally it is the board that you would focus on for that reason, that really it is up to the board to be kind of holding the chief executive responsible, and that is the point. I mean, people, and you see it even in the commercial world, kind of see the CEO as being out front and centre, as representing the organisation, but, we all have bosses in a way, and for the CEO, the chairman of the company and the board should be the boss, and I think it's important that people remember that. And I think if you do see CEOs that are in control of the board, I suppose it's one of those indicators of potential problems down the line. Okay.
And just a final point on that, Joe. Kevin Moran wrote this on The World today. I thought the most telling paragraph I've seen in a long time, when he said that John Delaney inherited his chief executive role and they had 12 million in the bank, and he left it with nearly 60 million of debt. That's the board's responsibility. I mean, in my view, that's the board's responsibility. We can criticise John Delaney. He was allowed to do that, and that's the important thing. And Sarah's point is that you change the board, you make the board responsible for doing their job. That's what you want them to do, do their job. And then the chief executive is either up to the game or he's not up to the game.
Yeah.
Okay. We're here with Timmy McCarthy speaking there, who captained and managed the Irish basketball team, commentator extraordinaire, and Sarah O'Connor, head of sport at Wilson Hartnell, formerly chief executive at the Federation of Irish Sport. Let's go from that, which is very serious and very heavy, to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, deliberately for a change of pace. There is nothing less important than something that's manufactured by the media, and we're all guilty of it, trust me. Off the ball, very much so as well. O'Donovan is some man for one man. Back page of the Sunday Independent, Eamon Sweeney. Paul O'Donovan is the Irish sports person of the decade. He does, I'm happy to say in the next line, that's only my opinion, but aren't all these end of decade accolades only a matter of opinion? And he makes the very true point. There's no flawless empirical method to decide who's achieved most. But, he says, if international achievement is the best yardstick, then O'Donovan, with 4 world titles and an Olympic silver, is pretty well placed. His only rivals are Katie Taylor, 3 amateur and 2 professional world titles and an Olympic gold, and Rory McIlroy, 4 majors and 95 weeks at world number 1. Both would make fine choices, is what he says. And then he says, McIlroy has to be disqualified because of his continued failure to carry a tricolour onto the green, onto the final green, while doing river dance with his caddy and singing Fields of Athenry. It's an insult to the memory of the famine dead. Okay, I don't really have any bulletproof argument for ruling against Rory. Is it because a lot of people say, well, Rory's not Irish. If I venture the opinion, I kicked that hornet's nest this week because I saw a great piece by Kieran Shannon on McIlroy, and I totally agree. For me, he is the sports person of the decade without wanting to talk down other big contenders. But it was amazing, a huge amount of the respondents were saying, well, hang on, like, he's not Irish. We're talking the Irish sports person of the decade. McIlroy's not Irish for me. Now, that's a viewpoint, but that's what goes against him, I think, in this argument for a lot of people.
Okay, so this is a rare moment in radio history when a Corkman votes against a Corkman. So this is really unusual.
Yeah. I would have thought you were home run for you, no?
Yeah, this is really, you know, I'm not sure I'll get back to Cork after this, but he's not sportsman of the decade. I mean, McIlroy is the sports person of the decade. I mean, what McIlroy has achieved in a single person sport is just exceptional. And I think what we forget in McIlroy's case is that because he won the majors at the early part of the decade, we can very easily forget his contribution over the entire decade in that sense. I had an issue with McIlroy in the Rio Olympics for not playing for Ireland, and you know, I said that publicly here at the time. Sure. In that sense. He now has sorted that issue out, okay, and he's now going to represent Ireland in the Olympics next year. He was always Irish. He just had to, you know, adjust some certain things while he was going in his life at that point in time. And you know, I would not like to see McIlroy singing the Fields of Athenry, by the way, and doing a jig on the 18th green. I do wish McIlroy wins the Masters. I think it would just bring his career to the pinnacle. But for me, McIlroy has it over Paul O'Donovan for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a one-man situation. He plays on his own. Paul O'Donovan has not won on his own. He's won with a number of other competitors, but he may be the strongest of the two in the boat. But he hasn't won on his own. He's an exceptional sports person, Paul O'Donovan.
He has won single sculls, it should be said.
Yeah, it is. But the level he's talking about here...
Olympics, no.
He won the World after the 2016.
Yeah,
he went to compete in the World Championships as a single sculler, and he won 2 weeks later, or within 10 days.
Because Eamon says here, there's his complete dominance as an individual. His winning margin in the 2016 World Lightweight Single Sculls final was the second biggest of the decade. His time in the 2017 final has only been bettered twice in the last 20 years. In neither race was O'Donovan put to the pin of his collar. He is undoubtedly the finest lightweight rower in the world today, one of the finest ever seen. The man from Lachine is an aquatic Sonia.
But Eamon lives in Cork, so I mean, Eamon lives very close by. I think
he does say at one point in fairness, I can see Paul O'Donovan's club from my front window and walk to it in less than a minute, and these judgments are personal after all.
Yeah, I was very lucky one time, Joe. I was voted Player of the Decade by the Sun of the World, so it's a great accolade to get for a period of time, right?
You just had to drop that in there.
And listen, I dropped it in because you don't care what anyone else thinks. You just take out the clipping and say, I got this at 1.9. But I will say, for me, McIlroy's achievement is just exceptional. Paul O'Donovan, Katie Taylor's another one who he makes a very good argument for. Sadly, I'm going against my Corkonian friend. McIlroy will get it for me.
Sarah, settle this for us.
Oh, sure. I think it's just, isn't it, the beauty of sport that you can have these debates, do you know? And look, I think it's been a great 10 years kind of for Irish sport. I think in terms of kind of consistency on the international stage, and even, you know, to have the likes of Katie. You know, the O'Donovan brothers, Paul O'Donovan in particular, even Sunita, Katie, Shane, Rory, kind of competing on the world stage. But I think, you know, the professional golf, I think, in terms of some of the individual professional sports, is probably up there with kind of some of the most competitive, you could almost say ruthless, you know, individual competitive sports out there. And I think, you know, hats off to the likes of Rory to have kind of stayed so consistent over such a long period of time. And like you, I really do hope he pulls off that Masters. It'd be horrible kind of to see him, I think, finish up and not do that. And I also think in terms of golf, I'm looking forward next season also to see Leona Maguire finally on the main LGPA tour as well, because her achievement of being top of the amateur rankings for as long as she was phenomenal. She had a good first season, so it'll be really interesting to see
Stephanie
how she
Meadows
goes.
on as well, actually.
And Stephanie Meadows, to have two on. And I think
that could really pierce through, actually, because Sky Sports have in the last year started showing the women's golf on Sunday nights as well, and showing them across the week. So I mean, look, if you like golf, trust me, you watch anything that's on, it's good. So if they feature and do well, it could be a big moment for them.
I think Leona Maguire is a very interesting challenge as well, you know, for this accolade, because what she did in the States was phenomenal. I mean,
as an amateur.
As an amateur,
yeah.
you know.
I think it's because we're not as au fait with the collegiate system,
Yeah,
and
we
maybe
don't
don't
hear so
appreciate
much
it.
about
Me
it.
included, by the way. I don't fully
and
appreciate
it's, you know, and I mean, like Paula Dunn was an amateur, technically. You know, if you take in the context of that. So, you know, I think we're very blinded at times by, you know, what we see in our screens. You know, so obviously we saw the Donovan brothers in the Olympics, and you know they became very popular in that sense. And then we, you know, RT have shown much more of the rowing post that event in that sense. But I think Leonie Maguire has been outstanding. I mean, herself and her sisters, you know, like at one point her sister was seen as a better player in that sense, right? Okay, she went to the States and I mean she dominated the amateur game in that sense, and I think she has a great professional career ahead of her. I think really she has, you know, she's got the game, and what she needs is what, you know, McIlroy got early on in his career, you know, or Harrington got, you know, when you need a quick win. I mean, Harrington got it in Spain when the last round was rained off, and he was deemed a winner, and you go on from that.
Yeah.
And so I think the fact that Sky will show it next, it will show a lot of it. We'll get to see more of her in that sense. You know?
Yeah. He does, by the way, say of Katie Taylor, and it's not like it's impossible to talk down Katie Taylor because what she has done is phenomenal. He says there is a question mark over the strength and depth of Taylor's sport, which wasn't even an Olympic discipline at the start of the decade, and also dubious judging in her fight against Delphine Pursoon this year. So I think for Katie, if, you know, narrative is almost part of this, isn't it? Because there's no empirical way of judging this. If her decade had been building up to winning an Olympic gold, she might feature more in our feelings. She actually won it, you know, at the start of this decade, and then there was the tough times in Rio, so it almost changes the feel around that. But what she's done is phenomenal, almost in
Well, I think
spearheading that
Katie's
sport.
kind of like, just almost created a sport.
Yeah.
Do you know?
And what weight do you give that in this
I know.
conversation is the tricky thing. Is that worth 2 majors? I don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult in terms of, I think, kind of sporting achievement, but I think there's absolutely no doubt kind of when people, you know, even 10 years' time stand back and look back, Katie Taylor's going to be one of those people, probably a little bit like Sonia Sullivan, you know, who completely...
Iconic.
Yeah.
I
And
think so, yeah.
she's, I think, had an impact, never mind about on a national scale, but on a global scale, and almost made a sport, like almost made or created boxing kind of for women. And it's particularly now, I was just saying, it's actually great to see her kind of finally, I think, probably earn a bit of an income from the game that will hopefully sustain her afterwards, because it would have been terrible, I think, given the scale of her achievements, to see her walk away from sport and not have had that security for what was to follow.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, Joe, his point though about the strength and depth of Katie's sport, you then can challenge the strength and depth of rowing. You know, you've got to be very careful when you throw a line like that in now. So, you know, if you're going to make a point for the sports person of the decade and say you're ruling Katie Taylor out because of the strength and depth in women's boxing, well, rowing is not really strength and depth worldwide in major sport either. So
is it not?
I wouldn't. You know, when compared to golf, compared to, you know, I mean, not really. I mean, so I think that you've got.
I'm taking your word for this now.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, yeah.
If someone texts in and says you're wrong, rowing is.
That's fine to say wrong or wrong, but no. I mean,
not.
no, it's not. I mean, you've got to look at the sport in the sense of, you know, the big countries, you know, the big performers. Sarah made a great point. Professional golf. I mean, the amount of, like, you know, professional golfers in the world is enormous. Like, and
the margins between them are zero.
And the margins there. And
magic.
McIlroy, you know, I think the point you made about Katie Taylor is very interesting. She won her Olympic medal at the start of the decade. Rory won his 4 majors early on in the decade. So we're starting to ignore McIlroy's achievements, and, you know, the FedEx Cups were taken, well, they're just, to 4 majors. And, you know, I mean, he was at one stage on Tiger's coattails as regards wins and age at a point in time. So, you know, it's a
bit of recency bias going against him.
But it's great that we have Irish people, as Sarah said, to talk about.
It is.
You know, in that sense.
It keeps us all entertained.
And it keeps us all entertained, you know.
Yeah. We'll take a short break. Tim McCarthy and Sarah O'Connor back in 1 sec. A few pieces to get to.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball. Down to Christmas with Bobby Kerr.
Join me, Bobby Kerr, as I ease you into your Christmas morning on News Talk. I'll be chatting to comedian Pat Short about Christmas and the year just gone by for him. Mike Hanrahan of Stockton's Wing, he'll be dropping by to talk music and food and how they come together in his life. We'll have music, we'll have more food, and a sleigh load of Christmas cheer.
Down to Christmas
With me, Bobby Kerr, Christmas morning at 9.
on News Talk.
This Irish success story is brought to you by Guaranteed Irish.
Home to Sean O'Casey and W.B. Yates, Mountjoy Square is also home to DID Electrical's first store since 1968. Now employing 350 people in 23 stores nationwide and online at did.ie. DID continues to deliver, install and demonstrate the latest appliances and technology. Guaranteed Irish welcomes companies that are altogether better choices for our communities. So look out for it. GuaranteedIrish.ie. Altogether better.
Jambo, we've settled into our new homes and everyone is looking after us really well. Cow is busy giving milk to help earn money for her family, and Camel is pulling his weight. But there's still so much to do, as many families are without animals to help them. So please, send more Boher animals this Christmas.
Darren Garrahy here, asking you to support Boher this Christmas. I've seen firsthand the difference a Boher gift can make. Please donate. Call 1850 829999 or visit boher.ie. Thank you.
Your partner's unique, romantic, exceptional. So for Christmas, get your special someone a voucher for a relaxing spa break at Monart. It's also unique, romantic, exceptional. And because Monart has been voted one of the very best spas in the world, you can relax too. Visit monart.ie. Something special for your someone special.
Almost. Yep, nearly. There. Told you. See? They do fit.
But can you actually walk, Jim?
I'll just breathe in.
Not everything is such a tight squeeze. Volkswagen Financial Services offers PCP, hire purchase and leasing options. So whatever vehicle you want to drive, you'll find a finance choice that fits comfortably. To find out more, visit your local authorised Volkswagen, Audi, Seat, Skoda or Volkswagen commercial vehicle retailer or visit vwfs.ie/PCP. PCP and hire purchase are offered by Volkswagen Bank GmbH Branch Ireland, authorised by the Federal Financial Supervisory Authority in Germany and regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland for conduct of business rules. Terms and conditions apply.
The Christmas song Ding Dong Merrily on High first appeared under the title of Brawl de l'Official, a dance book written by Jean Tabarot. The lyrics are from English composer George Ratcliffe Woodward, and the carol was first published in 1924 in the Cambridge Carol Book. More recently, Sir David Wilcox made an arrangement for the second book of carols for choirs. We at Bargaintown salute those who have brought this song to life and wish you and yours a ding-dong very Merry Christmas.
This St. Stephen's Day, get instant cash back on our huge range of LG, Sony, Samsung and Panasonic TVs. For more information, go online to powercity.ie or call in store today.
Today, it's Tottenham v Chelsea in a real Christmas cracker. And with Now TV, you can watch all the action live for a one-off payment of just €10. Hold on, they're checking with VAR.
That's confirmed, it's €10.
What a game changer. So, to only pay for the games that matter to you, grab a Now TV Sky Sports Day Pass. Search Now TV Sports. 18 plus, content streamed via internet, full terms apply.
Introducing Aldi's amazing Christmas fresh meat range. From December 20th, fresh whole turkey from only $8.99. Specially selected exquisite organic bronze whole turkey. And our Great Taste Award-winning specially selected Cook in the Bag bronze turkey crown. What a dazzling display. And on sale now, medium half horseshoe ham, just $7.99 each. All 100% Irish and Board Bia quality assured. So while your guests are shouting more, more, you'll be paying less, less. Put on an amazing show this Christmas.
This Christmas, what do you give the person who gives everything? The kind of person who's ready to leave their home and family, to launch a lifeboat and save a life. What could you give to the RNLI volunteers who depend on donations to fund their kit and training and need your support more than ever? The best gift they could receive is the one that helps them face the storm. Search RNLI Radio, donate today and help us face the perfect storm.
Last minute gift idea? The Press Up gift card can be enjoyed all year round in over 50 bars, restaurants, cinemas and hotels like the Devlin, Doolally, Sophie's, the Stella, Tomahawk, Elephant and Castle, the Grayson, Captain America's Family Restaurant, plus many more. Digital vouchers are now available online at pressup.ie or pick up a gift card in any Press Up venue.
All you need this Christmas is carry-out off-licence. Make your money go further with our incredible deals on box beers, multi-pack cans and wines from all over the world. Plus our amazing Eastern European selection, such as the fantastic Perla beer range, now in stock. Fill your cupboard for less this festive season. Carry out off-licence. Simply better wines and beers. Simply better value. Enjoy alcohol responsibly. Visit drinkaware.ie.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Now then, you're very welcome back. So we have Tim McCarthy in studio, who represented, captained and managed the Irish basketball team. We have Sarah O'Connor as well, Head of Sport at Wilson Hartnell, formerly Chief Executive at the Federation of Irish Sport. And Timmy, you've picked out a piece on page 10 of the Sunday Independent. It's Tommy Conlon. Ultimately, it's about darts, but really, it's ultimately about pressure.
Yeah, it's Willie O'Connor was playing Gerwyn Price in the Ali Palace. And
are you a darts man, by the way?
Well, I've been at the Ali Palace on 3 occasions, right? Now, just to clarify, I went there with on three corporate trips with a friend of mine in the UK.
What costume did you wear?
I actually wore Christmas elf.
Yeah, good.
Right, the first year, and I wore a Michael Jackson wig and outfit in the second year. But what's interesting about the Ali Pali is 95% of people, including myself, have no interest in the darts when you're there. It's actually just really a very good social night in that sense. And the 5% of people who are there for the darts, I'm not sure how they can actually see it because there's so much noise and activity in that sense. But what I did realise when I was over there is there was phenomenal pressure on the darts players because you have a couple of thousand people just really making your life hell. It's what happens if two darts go in for 60s. There's a bit of attention, and then if you make it, great for the 180. If you don't, but there's not a lot of attention on it. And it was interesting because Willie O'Connor was 2 frames all and 2 sets all.
This is O'Connor. He's a carpenter from Limerick, and he won his first round. And then he was against the number 3 seed Gerwyn Price, a former professional rugby player from Wales. But they're in the midst of this contest, and it's going well for O'Connor from Limerick.
Yeah, so it's 2 sets all, and it's 2 legs all in the set. And in that instance, you have to win by 2. And O'Connor has a dart as 4, double 2, to win it. So I was watching this at home, and so the camera comes on double 2, and and then you hear the dart hits the board, and you're kind of saying, oh my God, like, did he hit the crowd? And then you realise he went for double 1. And then Price had 70 odd to finish, and Price finished. And Price now is like a bulldog. Like, Price is built like a tank and is really very tough and aggressive. And I just kind of said to myself, oh my God, he just froze.
So for people listening who have no interest in darts, basically he's made the most basic mathematical error you can imagine and not realise that when it's 2-2 in legs that you have to win by a certain number. Yeah.
So he had to get double 2. So 2 2s is 4, and he went for double 1, which is 2. And it just is a purely mathematical error. It's a purely pressure situation. But what was even more sad to watch was he disintegrated then. I mean,
Tommy Conlon describes him then as ashen-faced for the rest of the match.
I mean, he's just lost it. I mean, what happens then? Price wins the set, so he goes 3-2 up. Then Price has the throw in the next. He gets his 180 to start, and O'Connor is just visibly breaking. I mean, it's just, and it's like from playing sport, Joe, we've all had moments where we've done things that just go wrong, in that sense. And it's how you respond is the test, because we all make mistakes. We all make missed shots. We all make bad decisions, and it's the sign of the great players is how they respond in that situation. And my observation of Willie O'Connor was his inability to respond is really where, to me, is the limit of his game at this point in time. He's got to learn to deal with a situation that, it goes wrong. That's life. Life gets in the way by all of things we have to deal with. But it was just so sad because you're rooting for the Irish guy. It's rare to see an Irish guy do well in the Ali Palace, especially against one of the big guns. And Price at the moment is a big gun in the game in that sense. And he makes just the most schoolboy error. I mean, it's if you made it in a pub and after a few pints that none of us can play darts, about throwing a few darts, you'd be ridiculed for the night. He's on a world stage in the World Championship, and he disintegrated. And the sadness for me was, as I said, his inability to recover. And that's, if you look at the greats, we talked about McIlroy and about sports person of the decade, his ability to recover. McIlroy broke down at the Masters, in the leading on the last day, fell apart, and yet came back afterwards and won majors. That was the sad thing. And I thought that, Tommy Conlon's piece, talked about the festive tragedy in the House of Flying Arrows. It just is a tragedy. It's not a festive tragedy. It's a sporting tragedy in a sport that doesn't get a lot of, it's not really that big in Ireland in the sense of, in material way of TV coverage or media coverage. And it was sad to see an Irish guy crack under the pressure of the biggest event,
Yeah, it's always hard to watch.
Very hard to watch.
Interviewed afterwards, he was still unable to make sense of it. I don't know. Maybe I thought I saw 2 on the scoreboard. I don't know. I wanted double 2 and I saw the 2 and I went for it. I'm not sure. Just something that happened. I just saw 2 on the board. He's still in shell shock really afterwards.
Yeah.
How do you make sense of that? But by all accounts, he played very well to get that far. So maybe he'll come back again. And Price could not believe his luck.
I thought the price line was brilliant. This is actually, to me, professional sport at its brilliance, okay? Price said, when he saw him go for obviously the wrong number, he said, happy days.
Yeah.
I knew he was going for the wrong number. I wasn't going to tap him on the shoulder and say, hey fella, you're going the wrong way. A win is a win. I'll have a great Christmas. And then he puts in the real patronising line. Hopefully he'll come back stronger. And and that's what professional sport is about. The ruthlessness of saying, this guy is making a big error and I'm going to capitalise. And that's what he did. That was the great thing Price did, though.
Yeah.
Price closed out the game.
Well, he had to go single 17, single 18, and then he hit what he needed after that. I'm not too sure. But he made 75 up to take the leg, and he made the 75. Interestingly, O'Connor did hit the target he was aiming at.
He did.
So he didn't wilt totally under the pressure. It was a mental error, but his throwing was intact.
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway, so hopefully he's back next year on the biggest stage again. Qatar features, do you want to touch on that very briefly before we go? Or if there's something else, obviously jump in, but we had that down. It's really just page 76, 77 and 75 in the Mail on Sunday. Ian Herbert's done a special report on the World Cup in store. It makes for interesting reading in lots of different ways. I don't know, did anything jump out to anyone?
It's kind of the story as well, I think, that we kind of keeps on going, that we kind of haven't really kind of got to the bottom of. There's been lots of conversation about, well, I think it's probably kind of moved on from whether or not it should happen in Qatar, because it is definitely happening, but maybe how Qatar got selected. And I think probably the confluence of lots of different things, part of the world maybe that a lot of us kind of don't know about, but the kind of fear, I suppose, as well about the workers building the stadiums, and then what it's going to be like to have a World Cup in a country that, strictly speaking, alcohol is banned, when I think probably most of us in the Western world put football and beer almost in the same sentence. So, I mean, I think Tommy made the point before we came on air again that it's good that sport's somewhere different, and I completely agree with that. I think that's one of the beauties of sport, that it can take you to places that you wouldn't go otherwise. But I think, these international sports events, again, are such a big business, and a lot of, so many people put so much into them, be it the athletes who, work so hard to try and get there, the fans who spend so much money trying to go there to support their teams, that if we want, the integrity of sport is dependent upon some of these events, I think, being
not bought for a start,
not bought, being awarded in the right way.
And
I think it's a pity to kind of see this commentary kind of ongoing with different events over the last 20 years, and it seems to be a problem again that's difficult to fix.
They're going to spend 5.3 billion in total. So they start off by talking, they're boasting about how well FIFA want the dressing room seats to be 60 centimetres wide, so ours are 80 centimetres, and they go on with all this stuff. You're meant to have a cold plunge pool. Well, we have a cold one and a hot one in the dressing rooms, all that kind of stuff. But Ian Herbert makes the point as well that, and 23 degrees is what the temperature was last week, by the way. So they're still going ahead with the 120,000 vents under the seats and beside the pitch, even though they won't be needed because the tournament's now in winter. But he made an interesting point a few people have made of late. The entire tournament will be staged in a strip of Doha 46 miles in length. Even the Supreme Committee acknowledged that squeezing an incoming audience, which topped 3 million in Russia last year, will be impossible. So Qatar's immigrant workers are engaged in a frenzied building program to create an entirely new metropolis, and that's going to host the World Cup final. They're basically building a city from scratch. And then in terms of accommodation, they know that there's no point building 70,000 beds, so they're going to have tented villages, and they're also going to have cruise ships off the coast with room for 5,000 people apiece. This is how they're going about it. And there's lots of colour in this piece about how the tournament's going to work. Like, in terms of alcohol, basically, Qatar, their sin tax, it's called a sin tax, limits things to £10 a pint. Although for the Club World Cup just gone, you could get pints for £5.20 and bottles of Merlot for £23 in a fan zone. It was a fan zone which was 12 miles from the stadium. So that's not how you imagine a World Cup, but it's kind of where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I think about Qatar, to me it's no difference to Salt Lake, or, what World Cups or what rugby, soccer, Olympic Games, you know, it's big money now. And I just think that what tends to happen is that we forget about the immigrant workers. You know, they get pushed. Like, go back to Rio. You know, there was a lot of issues with Rio before Rio. Once it happens, people forget about all that in that sense. And it was a strange choice. There's no doubt it was a financial choice. I mean, it was a strange choice. It's not that, you know, Argentina went in '78, which was a really ridiculed World Cup for off-the-field situations back then. But it was a footballing country. Like, Qatar is not a footballing country, so there's no logic from a footballing point of view. This is a financial decision by FIFA. And, you know, when we'll see the World Cup, we'll enjoy it for what it is in that point in time. But I've noticed that many major sporting events right now are soulless. Okay, I believe that the decision to give them to countries, the reasons they give it, are soulless in that sense. Otherwise, we'd have had a World Cup here in 2023. Why did we lose it? Not because we didn't have the best deal. Maybe there was other factors. So I've never give any credibility to decision making about this in sense. You know, you read books and Step Blatter and these guys like, you know, Havelange in Brazil. I mean, there's nothing genuine about these things.
Yeah, the model of these tournaments as well is that, you know, often they're held every 4 years, and the income that it has to generate has to sustain these sports around the world for 4 years. So you're always got this kind of financial trying to balance between kind of where the tournament's going to be. And
rugby very much so as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, we started with sports governance and now we finish with sports governance.
Yes.
We're right out of time, unfortunately. So thanks so much to both of you for coming in, and a happy Christmas. Timmy McCarthy and Sarah O'Connor, really appreciate it, guys. We're taking a short break here and then we will be back for kick-off at Vicarage Road. Manchester United against Watford. Just 1 second.
Christmas dinner or Christmas Sambo?
Love Christmas dinner. Love it.
Ooh, Christmas Sambo every time.
Neither. My favourite is Stephen's Day breakfast using the leftovers from the Christmas dinner.
Merry Christmas from News Talk.
Oh, fantastic.
Shop the Samsung Galaxy tablet and wearable range at Power City. Entertain your family with the Galaxy Tab A 10.1 inch. Experience a smarter way to track your wellness with the Galaxy Watch. For more information, go online to powercity.ie or call in store today.
At Renault, we're on a mission to drive down carbon emissions. So we created Renault Carbon Rewards, rewarding you for choosing a cleaner car with savings of €3,500 guaranteed on the all-new Renault Clio. For more rewards across our